joining us and staying with us this morning. Avoiding the one-party state trapdoor. Is it really a trapdoor? Well, of course, this is on the heels of the mass defection of politicians from opposition parties to the APC, which, of course, is raising a lot of debates here and there, particularly about Nigeria's political institutions and political parties. In the nearly 2 years since 2023 general elections, the APC has either infiltrated or dominated opposition strongholds. So the presidency, of course, is considering all of these allegations making the rounds baseless and exaggerated. Whether or not these issues are salient, you also find out in this conversation we're about to have with Ahmed Buhari, who is a former presidential candidate, Sustainable National Party (SMP) in 2019, and former vice presidential candidate of African Democratic Congress (ADC) in the 2023 elections. Seated right there with Professor Jidofo Adibe, who is a professor of international relations and political science at Nasarawa State University. Both of them join us, as you can see, from our Abuja studio. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Yeah, let me ask let me begin with Prof. The first thing on my mind, I'm looking at some of the things that the former president, Jonathan, said, and I'd like you to speak to that first. First of all, it's not the first time we are hearing these issues about one-party state. In the previous administration, well, I think when the PDP was also in government, we heard that, over and over again. Is it an utterly bad thing? The former president, Goodluck Jonathan, was quoted as saying that countries like Tanzania practiced a one-party system because, according to him, that nation had a reason to go the one-party way because of its multi-religion, multi-ethnic situations and all of those things. But here we are in our own country. What is your take on that comment from the former president?
Well, thank you very much. I have a lot of respect for Dr. Goodluck Jonathan. Before coming to that, let me say that what happened in Tanzania was that during the first, just after independence, there was this big conversation that multi-party democracy was un-African, that in African context, democracy was what they call talking till you agree. So they were trying to evolve a notion of what should constitute Africanist democracy. And it was not only Tanzania. Mostly many of the, independence, the leaders that led these independence struggles, like in Zambia too, the argument was that in traditional African societies, you did not need to institutionalize opposition. Therefore, that it would be un-African to have opposition parties that people could agree within one-party structure. But let me quickly get back to the idea of one-party state. First of all, let me make a clarification. There is a distinction between what we call one-party dominant states and one-party states. In one-party states, the law allows only the existence of one political party. We call such one-party states. It's not really, as people say, that we're going towards one-party states, unless there is a law that outlaws the existence of other parties. But you can have one-party dominant states where only one party is electorally viable to win party at the national level. And that often happens in many countries where, you can have multi-parties. Often you have one or two that are viable at the national level. And let me also mention that it is not necessarily true that if you have a one-party dominant state, it means that democracy is in abeyance. That's not true. In apartheid South Africa, for example, the National Party of South Africa ruled the country between 1948 and 1994, and nobody, at least for the whites, it was democratic because there was periodic election and all that. Since post-apartheid, since 1994 in South Africa, the ANC has dominated, and still nobody will argue that it is not a democratic country. If you move down, further down, you go to Sweden, the Social Democratic Workers' Party of Sweden has dominated Swedish politics since 1917. It has either won the majority in parliament or has the plurality. That means it has the highest votes among the competing parties. Then, if you also go to Mexico, the Revolutionary Party, if you go to Japan, let's go to Japan because so many people know. If you go to Japan, the Liberal Democratic Party of Japan, which was formed in 1955, had continued to dominate the Japanese politics. In fact, it had only been out of power twice. That was between 1993 and 1996, and between 2009 and 2012. In other words, the fact that you have a one-party dominant state does not necessarily mean that democracy is under threat. Conversely, the fact that you have more than one or two political parties that are viable, that is, can win power at the national level, does not necessarily mean that your system is democratic. You can have periodic elections, to fulfill the rituals, and still the content will become authoritarian. In such a state, we call them that illiberal democracies. So I think that distinction has to be made, that, we are not going towards one-party state. And even during the First Republic, let's say Second Republic of Shagari, what you had again was, you start with 5 political parties, suddenly it will often congeal to 2 or so being viable. And then under the Shagari, again, you saw something like that. So what I'm trying to say in essence is that we should get away from this notion that once you have one, I'm not advocating for it, because it tends to be a natural tendency. But often that tendency sows the seeds of its own implosion.
Interesting, Prof. Even though the former vice president, former president was saying that, look, if we must go the one-party way, we have to plan it and know exactly what we are getting into. But let me come to you, Mr. Buhari. What is your take on this whole conversation about a one-party being dominant? It's not the first time it's happening. If, as Prof just mentioned, between 1979 and 1983, even though there were 5 political parties, GMPP, AMPP, and all of those parties, the NPN was dominant from 1979 until 1983, when the second election was held. And in this same republic, this fourth republic that we're in, the PDP was dominant, as in really dominant for 16 straight years, until it was toppled in 2015. Is this really a new thing?
It's not really a new thing, Ayo. That's the truth. And if you go back to 1999, when this Fourth Republic started, we had 4 major political parties: the AD, the PDP, the APP, and of course ABGA. And if you look at the political terrain till today, the players that you find across all the political parties, the existing ones and including the dominant one, are all products from those 4 initial dominant political parties. And I think the reason why a lot of people will be, a bit resistant to seeing a one-party state is because it sort of slows the opposition's ability to gather itself together, or to actually find itself having a good position to contest for an upcoming election. So it would not want to see its members, move in droves to a particular political party, especially a political party that is in power. That's fear, that anxiety.
Yeah, my apologies, my sincere apologies. What's interesting in all these parties that you mentioned was that the PDP was really dominant. It had so many, more than half the number of states in Nigeria between 1999 and I think 2003 were governed by the PDP. These small parties that you talked about, they were very viable and virile, opposition parties. Isn't it surprising now that even though we have a political party, a PDP, for instance, that has quite a significant number of states, in, governing a significant number of states, the opposition is not as stiff as it was when the AD just had maybe about 5 states?
Very, very good question, Ayo. And in all honesty, I think the real conversation the opposition should be having right now with regards to why its members are leaving will bring me to the analogy when you look at Arsenal, for example, and Real Madrid, and then you start to wonder why are Real Madrid fans all of a sudden moving towards Arsenal and becoming Arsenal fans. And then the next thing you hear from Real Madrid is, don't worry, we will get their replacements. That's not what Real Madrid will say at a time like that. Real Madrid will think of strategies. Real Madrid will start asking itself, what is wrong within our political party? Why are people leaving? Do we have a leadership problem? Do we have a proper planning problem? What do we say to these members that are leaving that indeed, if we can formate ourselves properly together, if we can organize ourselves properly together, we stand a chance to win the next election? Let me tell you something. Across the world, people are driven by hope majorly. The moment you are not able to transfer that hope to the populace, you lose your entire essence. So back to the Arsenal-Real Madrid situation, we've seen clear cases, for example, in the PDP, where, like in Lagos State, for example, we had a rift between Bode George and the former gubernatorial candidate of the PDP, Mr. Jando. And I remember many times both of them came to public realm and spoke about their grievances with how either of them had, played the politics. And you would have expected that the PDP at a time like that called both parties to see how they will resolve them. But it never did happen. So if you see someone like a Jando moving today from the PDP to the APC, by all means, you would actually say maybe he's doing the right thing. The same thing with the Delta State governor that recently just moved to the APC. Look clearly, everybody knew he was going to move to the APC. Not for once did you see the PDP invite him to ask him, why does he want to go? What do we have to do to make you remain in the party? We haven't seen someone like former President Goodluck Jonathan, who I will still regard to be a chieftain in the PDP, call any of these top leaders to say, you know what, it's about time we reform this party so that these people do not leave. It's the same thing with the Labour Party. None of them is left out. Labour Party never knew they were going to win an election in the last election. Somehow, the tides moved in their favor, all right? But we have Labour Party representatives in the National Assembly. We have Labour Party representative as a governor in a state, Alex Otti, but none of them seem to be pushing any strong agenda for the sustenance of their own political party. And as a matter of fact, we are seeing them also slowly moving towards the APC. So I honestly do not think that there is anything wrong with Arsenal receiving anybody who wants to come and become a fan and a supporter, but I do really worry about the fact that maybe other political parties would now find a reason not to want to present to the Nigerian people better ideology, better programs, how well we can talk about more governance instead of politics, so that the conversation should be driven around what are we giving back to the people as dividends for the labor that they have been through. Okay. As a matter of fact, nobody's even talking about that right now. Okay.
Prof, by any standard, in the 2023 elections, the PDP made a showing, and the Labour Party also made a showing, because they gave APC, I would say, a few palpitations. So how come they are not concentrating on strengthening that showing which they made in 2023, and all they seem to be thinking about is joining the party in power?
Thank you very much. Let me start by disagreeing a little bit with my brother Buhari. For you to understand what's happening is for you to first understand the character of the Nigerian politics. In fact, the character of African politics. The institutions are very weak. What you have is the rule of the strong man. And that strong man at the center can decide whether you in Bayelsa State can be a member of the House of Assembly or not. So for that reason, across African countries, if you are in opposition, any opposition, it's not like opposition in Western countries. You know, it is very easy for the opposition members to be decimated. The leaders of the opposition parties, people are expecting too much. What leverages do you have? What troops do you have? The party that controls the center has all the appurtenances of power. When you talk about the power of incumbency, they have the EFCC, they can show you your own, they can call you and show you secret reports. And we saw it when Obasanjo came in 1999. And by 2003, when he recounted, he took almost everything, including in Southwest, where he didn't win anything. So, as a matter of self-survival, you know that why are everybody now trying to adopt Tinubu as a presidential candidate? They are supporting him because they know, even the governor, that a determined strong man, because it's a rule of the strong man. It's not like in other countries where the institutions are strong and you're cushioned from the effects of the strong man. And when you are dealing with a strong man who is both a fox and a lion, it's a different ballgame. A fox in the sense that he combines cunning with a strong heart. So I think you don't so much blame the opposition, you blame the character of the Nigerian politics. And the only thing I blame is that, I said it I think it was in this program, that El-Rufai acted too emotionally. He probably didn't properly understand or study the character of Nigerian politics. By moving into the STP, he showed his hand too early. And by showing your hands too early, for somebody like Tinubu, you may not like him, whatever you think of him, you have to respect the fact that you must give the devil his due. I'm not saying he's a devil, but he's battle-hardened. He's battle-hardened in this game, and he's one of the grandmasters. So you show him your hand, you are moving in the SDP, and you don't expect a strong counter-offensive. And he will make sure that even people planning to join that SDP, he will going to move against them. So I thought, and I think I said it in another forum, that for somebody, an opposition, what chances do you have? The 2014-15 scenario is different because there was an ideological drive in the North that could not be bought. But this is a different scenario, where if you're planning to deal with a man who is both a fox and a lion, you have to concentrate on how to outwit him, outcon him, and outmaneuver him. That whatever they were planning, I thought they should have been doing it clandestinely, so that within a short time you come with the element of surprise and making sure that you put him in a situation that he will be confronting at least 2-3 battles. Now more than 2 years to the point, you just say SDP. In any case, Tinubu was a senator under SDP. And how are you even sure that the leadership of the SDP is not an extension of Tinubu's political machine? And you come and say you're moving to SDP. It makes it difficult for people to go and move into the SDP. Because Tinubu is going to make sure, he's a grandmaster in this game. You give him that credit. That's it's not going to be viable. So they have to go back to the drawing board.
Mr. Buhari, how do we make the smaller parties stronger? Because all this that's going on now is weakening the smaller parties. Some of them are even going into oblivion. But we need to make them stronger because there has to be a viable opposition.
You're very correct. And just like Prof said, he believes that maybe El-Rufai and his friends made a move too early. But again, I would like to say to him that this is their decision. For me, the one thing I want to really talk about is good governance. And good governance can only be birthed when every sitting political party feels that indeed there's something coming after them. And I remember, I think just shortly after El-Rufai started making all of the moves, we started hearing the government speaking more about policies. And that is what drives the democracy. And that is the main reason why everybody would rather have a few competitors, so that those few competitors around, like you just mentioned, smaller parties, rearing their heads out. I remember in 2019 when I contested, I was in your studio, and I remember I was much younger, about 10 years ago, you laughed at me because you felt my neck was very skinny. But it had to be done.
I'm not so big now.
But it had to be done because I knew, or myself and my supporters knew, that we were going to drive to a point like this where a whole generation of young people will feel so hopeless, where a whole generation of young people will feel so hopeless that they would rather just join whatever is presented to them rather than create that new tribe. Now, that new tribe is where this conversation is driven around what you just mentioned, whether or not Labour Party gave a good scare to the system, whether or not we saw people who had never presented themselves on any political platform before winning political offices. Now that is the politics. That is what keeps everybody on their toes. So again, for these new political parties to succeed and to remain, they must understand a couple of things. Number one, I don't want to hear anybody say, damn to the old, damn with the old. You need the old and the young to drive a system. You need the wisdom of the old and definitely the energy of the young. And all of them have got to come together. What is most important is let's hear about healthcare. Let us hear about those things that we know that we do not have, that our politicians still go seek for in other places. Now, very importantly, people who are hearing this around my space will say, why do you want the old people? But even if they are faulty, even if they are old, even if they are weak, it's very important for us to realize that even a faulty clock is correct twice in a day. So we need everybody. In fact, we need the good, the bad, and the ugly, because it is in all of those mix that you have a reflection of the same Nigerian people that you want to govern. All I am asking for is, for us to have a way out, we must first of all understand that apart from this new tribe that we want to create, we must start pushing for independent candidacy. So let us know that some of the best brains in this country get eliminated at the primaries simply because allegedly they couldn't pay for it. Let's move forward. Let's look for this new Nigeria that we're looking for.
Professor, enter Professor Pat Utomi and the big tent, and with it, the shadow government. I mean, to you, you are a political scientist. How is this going to affect the dynamics of our politics?
Well, I have a lot of respect for Professor Pat Utomi. But my understanding of practical politics, I have not been a politician, and I pray I will not be one.
You got some money
No.
to save.
I don't want to. It's one thing I don't want to.
Your savings are intact.
Let me say one thing. I think Pat's approach, Professor Tommy's approach to politics sometimes tends to be like, it tends to see it as who will win in an intellectual argument. You know, it tends to see it as an academic exercise. I'm not critiquing him, but you can still see it's a critique. There was a saying that Adolf Hitler was told about the Pope's position on certain things. He said, how many troops does he control? So you have to understand, first of all, what leverage do you bring to the table, to the Nigerians? That is very critical. If you don't have any leverage, you cannot bring ideas. And Professor Utomi has a lot of ideas, but he's only one of several leverages that can make a difference. But let me also say something. It is not only political parties that, oppose governments or critique or make governments stand on their toes. Even during military regimes, you have vibrant Nigerians. You have civil societies that can provide a function of opposition. It's not only political parties. In fact, during the Second Republic, the Southwest was a bastion of opposition to the Shagari government.
Yeah.
And during the Buhari government, the Southeast was an opposition. And then you have a whole range of civil society groups that will be in opposition. Plus some individuals that don't really care. We have people like Shore, you have Gadi Fela Nikolapoto, Femi Falada. These are people that they don't care. They will say what they like. And they will, provide that they will be able to rally people around. So what I'm trying to say is that in the second step, I agree that we need to have a vibrant society. But it is much easier, and I'm not advocating for it, in countries where you have proportional representation, mostly in parliamentary system. It tends to encourage more of regionally based political parties, in which the argument is then that you have a number of regional parties that represent regional tendencies, and then power at the national level becomes negotiated. So in that sense, you will always have vibrant, smaller political parties. Don't forget, if you go to India, you have more than 2,500 political parties. And it's still a democracy. But then the question we should also be asking ourselves, are we really, whatever we call democracy today, as imperfect as it is, oppressed only at the federal level? It is only at the federal level we will be thinking of, do we win an election? Go to the state level and conduct an election by the State Independent Electoral Commission. If the governor is so magnanimous, he will concede 2 slots in local government. How many people have won elections against the state government in state judiciaries? Go to the state and critique a governor, and you know whether your house will not be pulled down for, constructing it in where you shouldn't. So,
Prof, you are the issue. Yeah, the issues you are raising, they are like Muhammad Ali's punches.
No, we have to contextualize all this.
Well, I understand you, but we have just about a minute, and I really wish we could do this. And I'd have wanted to take Mr. Buhari's point, but I'm asking a question from his comments, and Prof, you have just 30 seconds to tackle it.
Okay.
Do you see young people being significantly factored in all of these political machinations going on?
Again, this is a wronger. The young people have been ruling this country since independence. Apart from Buhari, who came at 71, the next oldest person was Obasanjo at 62. Tafawa Balewa was 54. Shagari was in early 50s. Most of the governors in the Second Republic were under 50. So if there is any group that will be talking of marginalization, is the group of people 65 and above.
Well, in that context, then, Prof, let them stay marginalized. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your time this morning. Definitely a conversation opener again. Professor Jidofo Adibe is Professor of International Relations and Political Science at Nasarawa State University, Kefi, along with Mr. Ahmed Buhari, former presidential candidate, Sustainable National Party, SMP, in 2019, and former vice presidential candidate, African Democratic Congress, in 2023. By the way, I promise you, Mr. Buhari, I am not one of those that laughed at you, if ever there was a laugh. Yeah. Thank you so much, gentlemen.
Anyway, so.
Thank you for your time.